I hope you got the coffee, water, whatever else floats your boat, and that you're now ready for our next session. We have a panel discussion, and we're looking at media in a platform age. The platforms we know, we've heard about them all morning. Are they a threat? Are they an opportunity? And how do we work with them? It's an excellent panel. I'm not going to introduce them. That's the job of interviewer. So please welcome to introduce our panel, the Chief Executive of the VDZ in Germany, Stephan Scherzer.
Hello. Hi. Hi, everyone. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. I think we have a great panel here, from many parts of the planet, which is good, which is typical FIPP, right? Not only one country, but many. We have Kalli Purie here. She's the editorial director of India Today. Welcome. We have Tomchak. She's the editor of Mashable here in the UK, running the team here. And we have Lars Moll. He's the general manager, products and business from Axel for the BILD group. So it's a good mix of editorial knowledge, content knowledge, business knowledge. And I heard this morning a good sentence, and that's what we all do. Are our products only nice to have? Or is it you can't do without them? And in a world of media where the challenges are so big, it's about relevance. By the way, this is paid content here. You paid for us, right? People can be content. So, and that's the hardest media currency we have: attention and paid attention. And also, we want to have the money from the advertiser. So that's the competition we are all in a world where we get more and more and more platforms competing with us, and the media budgets people spend, they are also changing. You know, you have now people spending money for Spotify, people spending money for Amazon Prime, for Sky Sports, for all these services. And they need to subscribe to our magazines and paid content. So that's the world we are in. So I want to start with the question, go a couple years back, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever you can remember. What has really changed for your business in this last 5 years? What is like the core 1 or 2 main challenges you face right now, Anne-Marie?
Right, well, I've only been with Mashable for a year, but I can hark back 5 years. And I think like the biggest distinction I can make in terms of the industry that I'm in as a journalist, at the time was a reporter and presenter and now an editor, is the nature in which we distribute news and the nature in which we news gather. I think 5 years ago it would have been relatively a new thing to news gather and do original journalism using social media, for example. I know user-generated content was obviously a really big thing, and verification, but the types of challenges that we now face because of the proliferation of fake news and because the distribution model for news and information has completely changed, and the business model around that has changed as a consequence as well. So I would say that is probably, in my view, the biggest change I've noticed as a journalist.
Kalli, what is your...
I think one of the biggest changes has been video, and the print publications having to also create video, whether it's going out and shooting original videos when they do the story with their little mojo kits, or whether it's doing an FB Live around the latest issue that they've done, or on a particular topic, let's say elections, or some big blast has happened, or something like that, right? That's one of the big opportunities, and it's also the big training or change that editorial teams in the print side need to make. The other one has obviously been social media, looking at your content and saying, how can I present this in a good way that it'll viral? The content can still remain true to what the journalist wants, but the way you package it in the instant that it gets the click has to be thought of slightly differently. So getting them to think a little bit more in the online hookable format, I think has changed largely in the last 2 years for us, 2-3 years.
Lars, when you look at the business side, what is the major challenge right now, and even if you compare it to 5 years ago?
I think the main challenge is that you're in a competition with Google and Facebook selling data points, and as a publisher, we have data points, but not that much, and but we use our own strengths to sell media. For example, to build vertical content channels where we integrate partners on a long-term basis, and we see two directions. The one is that you combine data, but the other one is that a lot of clients, they still want visibility, and they want trusted and reliable content channels where they know where the brand is being placed. And this is one of the challenges. And the other one was for business reasons, but I think we are quite good there right now, is that mobile traffic is much larger than desktop traffic right now. And the monetization grew a little bit later, but right now we are at a good point and selling good advertising there. For example, with native advertising and content integrations into the website.
Yeah, you mentioned two important things, like content and trust. So most of the publishers have so many channels now where we reach our people. And when you take, it's not only social media, it's Facebook, it's WhatsApp, it's Snapchat, it's Instagram, it's, and it's more channels coming. And then you have print, you have web, you have mobile, you have the e-commerce parts, you run conferences like here. So how do you manage that people really get connected with your brand? You're not accidentally getting driven through by an algorithm and then they disappear and they forget you. So how you make sure you keep them in your environment, Kalli?
Well, it's difficult to do because if you want to participate with Facebook and Google, they are pretty strict about the kind of format they want you to engage in. I mean, if you want to be part of the instant article story in Facebook, you have to follow their format. And same for Google with their AMP or accelerated mobile pages. You have to follow their format. I think what you need to do in that is keep a very strong voice and be, like I say, their favorite mistress. So if you are Google and Facebook's favorite mistress, you have more of a chance of dictating terms to them and saying, well, I'm not going to do this, and I want related links in here, and I want to be able to monetize this, things like that. But I think if you're going to stick your back up and say, look, I'm not going to put my content where I can't be within my strict brand framework, then you're just not going to be available. And one of the most important things I think right now is that you should be available in every platform and format that you can, because you really don't know which one is going to click. Twitter was the talk of town 5 years ago. Then it went through a big dip. It was all Facebook, right? Now it's all Snapchat. Twitter is coming back because they're planning to monetize, and they've got this Periscope thing going on. So you just don't know. I think you've just got to flirt with everyone.
So Lars, you agree? You have like all the channels you need to cover them all, and or is there from audience to audience maybe a different? So I know that for women's title, Instagram is mandatory. Yeah. For young girls, Instagram is mandatory.
I don't necessarily agree that you need to be everywhere. I think that it's actually really important about being selective about where you decide to focus your energies and really understanding your audience and knowing what your audience's needs are and what they're interested in, knowing how to grow new audiences. So, for example, with Mashable, we are in lots of different places, but the way in which we produce content on Snapchat Discover, for example, and we're a Discover partner, both here with the localized edition in the UK and Ireland and then internationally, is like knowing that particular offering could be completely different because you really know, you have intimate knowledge about what actually works with the type of content you produce for that audience. I think doing something for the sake of it, let's say the pivot to video trend that everyone seems to be veering towards. Yes, pivot to video is important. It's a really good way of building up ad revenue. But again, I would say be really selective, produce really good quality video, and actually be very strategic about that, about how you reach your audience and how you make money out of it. Otherwise, it's a complete waste of time and it's just adding to more noise.
Yeah. Now, I want to add something about the quality of video here, and it's one of the things why print publishers, I think, shy away from it. Now, I want to take a slightly different line to it, to encourage print publishers to do it, because we have a TV company as well as a print company. So we obviously have very professionally shot videos done for television and broadcasting, which we put online, but we also do really organic, raw stuff just done by a journalist who's extremely non-telegenic, and if I was auditioning him, I would never put him on TV. But
What's the story?
yes, and it works, but it works because it's so raw, and it's not very high quality, and for some reason, people like the fact that it's coming from someone they can trust or is not coming from any kind of vested interest. So there are two things running at the same time. You need the brand in case of, oh, I don't want to look at this kind of social media because it could be fake news. But on the other hand, people also trust other people like them versus brands. So there's a mix of that going on.
So Lars, what is your experience at BILD? I mean, it's a big brand, lots of reach. You test a lot. You have even a strong paid content strategy. So how do you look at it?
I would like to add something. You said, I even think you don't have to jump on every train and you need to target the content for the platforms you're on. But with BILD, we have 20 million unique users in Germany, which is half of the online population in the country. So our strategy is, and this is part of our innovation process, to be on every platform where our users can be. And this is Snapchat as well. It's even Amazon Echo. We produce audio content for Amazon Echo, even if there's not a business case already, because our opinion is that we test and learn, and we would like to understand the platforms. We build teams for every platform. We are Snapchat Discover partner as well, and I think we started with Snapchat 1.5 years or 1 year ago with a team, and we have a real team now working on Snapchat because we don't see it as another distribution channel where you put content, but we see it as a channel where you really need to understand the target group. It's very, very much younger than our average audience, and so our strategy is be on every platform, be there where the users are, and then trial and error and test and learn.
But I would say prioritize as well.
Yeah, sure. I mean, sure, Facebook is more important than Twitter, for example, that's sure, but we want know how Snapchat is working, what the users are thinking.
So do you have then a completely different brand voice in all these channels because people are younger, male or female, or do you still have an overarching, that's a BILD voice?
I think
and then you go like, then it's changing.
You always know that it's BILD content because it's branded in a special way. We are red and color, and
alert.
You know the logo and the kind of journalism we do. You should know that this is BILD. But if you look at Snapchat or on Facebook, or if you look on Instagram, and even on mobile and desktop, if you do a video there, it differs from channel to channel. So we do 5 or 6 versions of each video we publish. We will never publish the same video on all channels, and I think that's important.
So Kalli, how are you?
I agree with him, because I mean the initial experimentations for most publishers was take what you've got and translate it in little bits and put it into the other platforms. But over time, trial and error, you find actually what you do originally for that platform as a variation of what you have done for the print works much, much better with engagement. So, you might as well, like she said, prioritize that piece rather than just translating what you've done for print onto digital and just shoot it originally for digital or create something specifically for that platform.
But the objective behind this for us is always to drive, in the end, users to our core platforms and to our core brand. We have 70% direct traffic in Germany, what is very unusual. So not SEO traffic, but direct traffic. And the objective is always to be with your content on every platform so that the people know that you're a trusted brand and then go directly to your website.
So that's a I will come to that point later because it shows how important it is to really work hard on your brand recognition. If you lose it, your search traffic will go up. So what is with the Mashable voice on all these different channels? How do you keep that in line and make sure that you can experiment, but not that everyone goes crazy and you have completely...
Yeah, I think that the editorial, the selection of stories and type themes and content is quite different across different platforms. So for example, with Snapchat Discover, our coverage is very iPhone heavy. Our audience are absolutely obsessed with their phones and they want to know how they can save, data on their phone or battery power, all of these kind of things. So it's very, very tech focused. But then we would do a lot of entertainment coverage, for example, across our YouTube and other spaces as well. But the tone will still be there. It'll still be like a progressive, millennial, young tone, but very intelligent. I mean, not talking down to the audience as well. With Snapchat, a big part of our audience are 13 to 17-year-olds, and when you try to talk, you know, in a cool, let's say a really cool voice, it just doesn't work. It doesn't resonate with them. Like, I think they go to you because you're that brand, because you're that authority on the latest tech and the gadgets. So they don't want you to talk to them like you're, you know, the same age as them. They want you to be that voice of authority. And I think recognizing that is really important.
I think that's one of the cool things about being on social media, that if you do go off what they think should be your voice, you are told off. You're like, what do you think you're doing? You're the India Today group. How can you do this, etc. So you can't really wear off your brand, which is a good thing. That they understand what your voice is, and sometimes if you try to go off the page a little bit, you'll be put back on place, saying, you know, that's not your brand.
So when we're talking about brands, we talk about content, the editor's right. It's like we are right now, the content, the audience hopefully listening to. But then you have the content your audience is creating. As you said, like in the forums, they post their own videos, or they try to engage with your brand. So how do you make sure that you then keep them in your environment? You know, in the olden days, we had subscriptions. It's the best possible business for publishers. Right? People pay for your content. They don't need to go to the newsstand. You know exactly the numbers of publications you need to print. So what is the new strategy for you guys to get to people to log in with your brand?
So I would say to get people really invested and to have, you know, not just spikes of visitors, but actually consistent return audience. I think using data really strategically is very, very important, whether that's the use of data to figure out what stories are resonating with your audience or what stories are picking up steam before you decide during that editorial meeting which story you're going to select, but then also how you're going to move the narrative forward, you know, during the story selection process, and how you're going to tell that through, in my case, through the Mashable, through the prism of that Mashable voice, that editorial. So that's what I would say.
I think one of, sorry.
Oh, it's okay. Lars.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's important to have a fair business relationship as well with the social networks. I mean, if it's important to have trusted brands in the network and trusted journalistic content and no fake news, and to make sure that the publishers invest in content and invest in content on those platforms, there is a need of fair business models. So be it advertising-wise, to talk about fair shares, to allow paid content on those platforms as well, and to allow us to use the data points that we generate with our own content there, because then we can get the users back to our own platforms because we know who they are. And I think this is part of the whole strategy as well. The content has to be great. If the people are convinced from great content, they're going back to your channels as well. But we need a fair partnership when it comes to data points and business relations as well.
So how do you log in people?
I think that it's not so much as getting them to stay on your platform as it's to get on the issues that they're talking about. I mean, one of the ways to engage with them is to, what is the social media talking about today, and how do we get onto that story? How do we get onto that train today, right? So you're always top of mind with the audience, and that's a good way to kind of stay with the audience, because you're always talking about what they're talking about. In that sense, editors are no longer gods. We don't always get to choose what we want to run. I may want to run something else, but actually something else is on top of mind. And so either I can go there and start imposing, no, this is what we think you should be reading. It doesn't work anymore on the internet. You've got to also pick up what they're talking about, and then maybe slip in some of the things you want to talk about. And there has to be.
There are nuanced ways, I think, as well of bringing in certain things, like editorially into stories. I can give you two examples with Mashable. Like again, to your point, knowing the themes or the topics that your audience really love is really important. In our case, we have a lot of super fans, people who are obsessed with, for example, Harry Potter or Star Wars and Game of Thrones, getting into the tiny minutiae of the stories, and knowing that audience is really, really important. I am losing my trail of thought as to what my actual
point was. No, so if there's Game of Thrones finale going on, right, you can't be talking about
giving them what
Trudeau.
they want, right? So giving them what they want is one thing, but that's populism. So how do you actually get in a really good story and an editorial in there? Back to my examples. we covered the Affordable Care Act in the US, obviously really a topical issue. But the way in which we brought that story to our audience was about how people are using Facebook to talk about their mental health, and then that could actually affect their insurance premiums. So you're contextualizing that story in a way that's really relevant to a young millennial audience who, you know, has this issue of mental health and wants to talk about it on their digital platforms with their friends, and they're directly affected by that. So I think it's about thinking in a more nuanced way about how you offer those stories. Again, another story I can give you we did this week about the pumpkin spice latte in the Starbucks drink that is, you know, a cultural phenomenon at this stage. It sounds like a really light story, but actually we did one about how it signifies the end of the American empire, and we talked to lots of historians, and you know the idea is that an empire would last around 250 years. Now America is around 241 years in, so it's got about 9 years left, and the final 10 years are usually very opulent. So we look at Donald Trump and the, you know, blingness of him and the pumpkin spice latte. So it's like a really fun zeitgeisty way actually into a more meaningful topic. And I think we need to be just much more clever and more creative now.
So listening to you, and do we move in an age of the niche, of vertical interest? Because digital has helped that there's for everything you are interested in, there is a website, a blog, a vlog, a community, and we see it also in print. In Germany, just to give you an example, we have 4,000 B2B magazines and almost 1,700 printed consumer magazines. That's a lot. So we basically replicate on the newsstand the variety of the net. Do you see in your brands, from channel to channel to channel, that we get more niche by the time, know more about the audience? Or is it still like that you focus on the, like in the olden days, on this one big group? Or do you just slice and dice your audience more and more?
With BILD, for example, we focus still on the big group, but even there is news, there's entertainment, there's sports. But I would say yes, I won't call it niche, we call it vertical websites, because niche sounds so small. They are not small, they have 2 million unique users. We launched in the last 5 years 4 websites. We call it the book family. We have travel, style, tech, and Fitbook. And they all are working very well, be it business-wise and be it user-wise. And we have Noise, a colleague of mine was here on the panel before. It's a urban trendsetter portal we've launched in Germany, and we are there with 4 million visits right now. And I think, and we don't do that with the brand BILD, because we do it because we tell the story in another way there. It's more lifestyle orientated, it's more inspiring, and BILD it's a news portal. Yeah? It always has to be fast and the first to have the news. And so we did the vertical strategy, and this is going very well, because this is going very well in the advertising market, even if you have no data points there, because clients, we have fixed clients for years, for example, Deutsche Telekom with TechBook, who are fixed integrated into the website. And this could be a model to, a parallel model you could establish next to the rare selling of the media inventory on your website.
So in the niche model, the strategy that we're working on very recently, it's one of the experimentations we're doing, is looking at niche, but looking at niche video. So not setting up vertical websites, but setting up vertical channels of special interest, whether it's sports or yoga or lifestyle or food or any of those things, because it's coming from, because we have broadcasting with us, it's quite easy to do it on digital. I find it's much easier now to do it than it ever was. You know, with the little phones and everything, it works. So that's the route we're taking with niche, and looking at whether we can set up, little YouTube channels there. And then maybe if one of them really clicks very well, you have a reverse process and you go into broadcasting. So
I think just to add to what you guys have said, I think personalization is something that I think we as editors need to, it's something that we can't ignore. The increasing personalization of the way in which we consume news and information, like for example, how algorithms and how artificial intelligence will impact on that. And I think that we need to recognize that there are going to be massive challenges ahead for us as journalists, but that there are ways in which the tech can help us. If you look at FIPP World, for example, we're one of the launch partners with them today on some new features that they've just launched. And it's a way in which they try to work with an algorithm as well as a human team, and that combination of human and machine to actually try to work together to combat a lot of the big challenges that we're facing now with the spread of false information or misinformation.
So maybe take a little look, time is running in the future. So we came a long way as publishers, from print, and then the web came. The web was completely different than print was. At the beginning we believed it's the same, it's not. Then mobile came, another completely different animal. And Lars, you already mentioned, and you just mentioned, man-machine collaboration, intelligence machines, chatbots. What is your view on that? Because is this hype, or is this really the next big disruptor? Because if a machine will be able in 5 years, on a question you ask the machine, to create on the fly, in milliseconds, content pieces, writing content, this could change, again, the way we communicate, the way we consume, because there's not even a screen needed.
Well, that's already happening.
Right.
So robo-journalism is already happening. I'm currently making a TV documentary called Will a Robot Steal My Job for Ireland's national broadcaster, RTE. And one of the sequences in the documentary, we go to a live event, a football game in Oxford, and we had a real journalist who's there reporting on the game, and then we had a robot, and it was using a program called Wordsmith, where take in all the info of the game, and I had to look at each piece of copy and try to guess which one was the robot. Now I could tell straight away which one was the robot because it didn't have like some of the empathy and the feeling that you get, but actually it was still a pretty adequate report. And I think so that this is where the news landscape is going to change. We are going to potentially rely much more on machines to produce very factual pieces of information. But I think where the human element of the story needs to still be there is where the editor comes with that passion and the human nature of the story, which is ultimately why people would share something.
And also have the brand.
Yeah,
staying for the content.
exactly. How can you program that in? So
she's absolutely right, because Facebook started off by, during the US elections, getting rid of all the human editors and working with an algo. And they've actually had to go back and hire the human editors now, and they're going back and hiring 1,000 editors to basically work with the algo. So it's a combination.
That's how you see it.
We see some examples in the German market. There's an agency covering all soccer games in Germany and doing those robot texts already, and a lot of publishers use them. We don't, because we don't have the regional sports part, but it's great. The texts are great. And some weather text and some finance text. In my opinion, it could add up as a service for texts that don't need to have a real brand voice, maybe. And but even in my opinion, the best algorithm is still our editorial team.
And there's an awful lot of hype as well about AI and algorithms. I think, yes, there are big problems with it. For example, rogue algorithm could end up poisoning some of the information that tops Google News search. But ultimately, the tech is there to help us, not to necessarily replace us. That's what I would say.
So probably when I hear you and when we look at what's happening in the industry, that's a man-machine collaboration, because we all look for efficiency. We all have to look for what's the next to combine those forces. One example was when Google was training the AI to play Go and win against the world's famous Go player. It was only possible because they combined all the human...
Yeah, and combining different sets of programming into a robot. A robot is generally quite primitive. They can be programmed to do maybe one or a few different things. But if you think of your average 2-year-old, or even like a 6-month-old crawling around, they can recognize things that they might bump into. They can, their spatial relations and their emotional recognition is far more sophisticated than a robot. So the idea that a robot will replace us, I think, is still something that is way off and something from a science fiction film.
Yeah, we're gonna gather here a couple of times in this group in 5 or 10 years.
I might be wrong. I hope
And there'll be a robot sitting here.
So we can. I think we have to go to the last round of questions. I just heard this afternoon a Reuters presentation. It was really cool, and the biggest learning of most of the CEO was we didn't took our challenges too light. We didn't saw the massive change which will come our way. So when you give from your perspective, maybe one or two thoughts, what is your secret sauce? What is your things you've learned in the last couple of years and which give to the audience as useful information at the end? Like one or two learnings. HR, hiring people, what is your... Lars?
I think pragmatism, trial and error. What you said about video, we have 600 reporters, everybody can publish a video with his iPhone on our homepage. I mean, it's the biggest homepage in Germany. That wasn't possible 2 or 3 years ago. And some luck. And what I said before with all the platforms and the channels, yeah, be where the audience are and then observe what's going on and decide where you would like to invest or not, and do that very early. I think don't wait that something is getting big and then there's a tipping point and then you have to jump on the train. That's too late.
Don't shoot for 100%. Be happy if you get 70.
I think our secret sauce is being truly platform agnostic. And not looking at ourselves as a print publication. And this was one of my suggestions to the board of FIPP, saying that we should actually rebrand ourselves as Federation of International Content Creators, because every conference that we go to or congress we go to, we keep talking about don't look at yourself as print publishers, but look at yourself as content creators. But then why are we still talking about just print? We're not print, we're content creators. And so to me, the next couple of years is really exciting, as you know, the presentation before us said, because there's so many new platforms coming and we don't even know what's coming. We just have to be ready for it, you know?
Right.
It's so exciting.
Anne-Marie.
Yeah, I think this is something I have said before, and I'm sure you've heard it in many other conferences, but as a journalist, I think it's really important not to rush to be first. It is more important to be right, or to think about what you actually want to say. You know, it's really important to like think, what are we actually trying to achieve here? And then the other thing is, I think, just be really nimble and be ready to pivot. You know, there are lots of exciting things I have done over the past year. Some things work for a while, and then suddenly you're seeing this, the data is telling you it's not working, and you need to be really flexible and just be willing to continually grow, continually be challenged. And then the other thing is, I think, just don't be afraid to pop your foot on the brake pedal now and again. It's not about the number of pieces of content that you're creating. There's just, you know, that is a strategy that has worked in the past, I think, for a number of publishers. But I would say with Mashable, for example, you know, producing less content but more high quality content that's actually going to resonate and have much more return on investment is a much more prudent choice, I would say.
And when I look at all of you and the way you act and talk, passion. You need to have passion for what you do. And thanks a lot. And thanks for listening to us. Hopefully it was interesting. Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
And thank you to Stephan and the panel. Well, we now have a coffee break. Back here, please, or in the alternative stages. 16:20, 20 past 4 in old-fashioned language. And while you're having a coffee break, go and check out the FIPP Innovators Tour, Digital Innovators Tour, and the Digital Innovators